in our Bell Let's Talk Zoom session. We've got Residence Life Manager Marc Athanas. For those of you who don't know, Marc, you are, give us a bit of your background. How long have you been with residents?
So I've been with the residents now for at least 15 years. So I have, I've been fortunate enough to see life, I guess, within the residence before we were fortunate enough to have an outreach worker. And I've seen the difference it's made having an outreach worker in the residence, and not to mention just the general, honestly, growth and acceptance towards mental health and mental health initiatives like Bell Let's Talk over the years. Because, you know, now it seems like something that's been around forever, but it really hasn't. So there was certainly a time where mental health was definitely at the forefront, and we were a lot less well equipped to really manage it, I guess. And we've certainly become better at that, and not just the residents, but as a society. So that's a good thing. So yeah, been here a while.
Yeah, no, and I'd agree with you on that, I think. And so for anyone tuning in, today is Bell Let's Talk Day, and we are putting together this session to talk about COVID safety and just mental health in general. I am your current residence outreach worker, Louise Stiles. And so, like I say, Marc and I are just going to chat, go over a few things, just to try to cover all our bases, I think, as it were, right? So,
Yeah.
And Marc, I think you said it there, right? In the 15 years that you've been in res, like you've really seen a change, a positive change and trend towards, you know, mental health being at the forefront, and having those conversations. How do you feel that residence has worked to keep up with that or lead the way with that? In many cases, I think we've done a good job on campus, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a bit of a long history, I guess, but the campus community and the campus resources, the campus health center, and both institutions have been incredibly supportive whenever we've had questions. Because again, before you sort of had the knowledge and some of the trainings you receive from mental health first aid to, you know, safe talk and things like that. You know, before you received those trainings, you were really just seeing behaviors, and you really didn't have context for some of the behaviors we were seeing. So the first evolution really was a lot of guidance from the campus health center, the counselors on campus, leading up to sort of the joint development between the residents and the institution to place a residence outreach worker at the services of the residents. And that when that first started, it was like a part-time position. And I remember we were trying to figure out, well, when do you want them? And reality was like, it was impossible to pick a date and time, because there was no accounting for when someone might be in crisis, which tended to be after hours, which tended to be, you know, on the weekends or at certain peak times, but it was almost impossible to really pick. And so the best way I can describe it was, before we had a permanent residence outreach worker in the residence, we were dealing with a lot more students in crisis. And then the second we had a residence outreach worker within the residence building, it was like we installed a release valve, and it almost came to a complete stop in terms of what our staff was seeing. It wasn't that people weren't in crisis anymore. It was just that we had a properly equipped professional to respond and to proactively respond, as opposed to what for us was a lot of reactive response, because we would become aware of a behavior and then have to deal with it. You know, and it wasn't that there weren't resources on campus already there to manage that. It was just that if you build it, they will come. You put it where the students lived, it's a lot easier for the students to access it. And that just sort of really led the way. Obviously this year with COVID, with so many things being remote, and I think just in general, the societal withdrawal from people just meeting in person, you know, I'm sure there's a greater need with COVID. And actually, I say this year, but it's actually last year going into this year,
That's right.
You know, it's been a thing that I think not just within the residents, but societally, again, people have felt not as supported and more isolated with their mental health. And so pretty appropriate on a day like today to kind of recap that the resources are all still here. They haven't really gone anywhere. They've just somewhat changed how you get that service. You might not be able to sit in the same room with someone, but you're still going to be able to talk. And I think that's the important piece.
So it sounds like, overall having that in-house individual sort of filling that need, filling that role has lessened sort of like you say, the more crisis situations, and people are feeling more comfortable that there's somewhere to go, to be heard, to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
and just to unload generally.
Yeah.
Any issue, and like no issue too big, no issue too small, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if something's uncomfortable.
Yeah, like historically, a lot of what tends, I guess I've seen that happens here in the residence is that the small things build up and then it becomes unmanageable. And then you're in crisis because it's kind of like things are under pressure, things are getting bottled up, and you're not having that opportunity to freely open up and discuss it. And I shouldn't say the opportunity because I think it's always there. But it's so much more effective when you have, again, sort of the proper resource to manage that. We've always had RAs, we've always had managers, we've always had a staff that's willing and open and hopefully being very supportive. But we're not mental health professionals. So the help we can give is relatively limited other than listening and really getting you to the appropriate resource. When you have the resource here, they can sort of skip the middle person and go straight to the source that gets them the greatest amount of help. So it's been, a real game changer for us.
Yeah, and you brought me to actually, which was my next point, the RA staff. So those are the residence advisors, right, and they're students, and they live within residence. How would you say the RAs are now trained in terms of, or how do you feel they're sort of being provided with the tools to support students, just so our students kind of have an idea of the work that our RAs put in behind the scenes?
Yeah, RAs receive a variety of training. In fact, it's actually pretty in-depth 2-week training. They sit down and obviously spend some time with Louise as our outreach worker to tackle topics that are surrounding mental health. We try to give them some training around students who might be on the spectrum. We give them training around students who might be experiencing suicidal thoughts and ideations. We give them training around students who might be dealing with alcohol and substance abuse or sexual violence reporting. So they receive a plethora of training to try to cover all things and all topics, from conflict mediation to how to program your pet rock nights and the events you see that we host. And the real aim of that, and again, appropriate to talk about it on a day like today, the Let's Talk Day, is that we want them comfortable with the topic. We want to remove any stigma around a lot of these topics because they're, quite frankly, things that people are going through coming to school, or discover once they get to school. They may receive a diagnosis and they just have to manage and deal with all of those things while trying to be a student, So it's to help the RAs be comfortable having those conversations that I think, again, as I've seen, society's become more comfortable having. And so that's the important thing, because I think once you start talking about it, once you start getting connected to the correct resources, things get better. Got to put in the work, but things get better.
I'd agree. And so in terms of the flip side, so for our residents, our in-house students, what is the expectation, if any, and there are, of course, always expectations, but what expectations are there in terms of, compassion, empathy, respect, as a community when students are living in-house in regards to mental health and community safety?
Yeah, so we all have a responsibility. We're part of a community here, especially within the residence. You live here, it's your home.
That's right.
And similar to being at home, you care about sort of the home family unit ideally, and you want to take care of each other and keep each other safe, and you want to respect each other. What we mostly want from our students is really again, that empathy and understanding and respect, that you're within a community, and whether that be a noise related issue where, hey, maybe you're making a lot of noise and you're fine with that level of noise, but it's disturbing your neighbors, or it's something where, hey, someone's struggling and you don't really know what that person's going through. You haven't been through their shoes. You don't know what their life is. And it's not a competition. We're not asking you to compare lives. So it's important we're respectful of their journey together. And we try to do that as much as possible. We try to reciprocate that lesson throughout as much as possible, and try to relate, when we do have to have conversations with students, that it's a community thing. It's a bit of a community approach. We want people to have that thought towards sort of the greater community as they go through things. And some empathy just in life and in general will go a long way.
Yep.
To helping people, I think, just get along better and understand each other and avoid unnecessary strife and conflict. It doesn't mean that strife and conflict won't happen, but, I think sometimes people can make it unnecessary, and maybe that's through, cyberbullying, or maybe it's just through taunting, or just being a little cruel, and maybe not understanding, and being respectful of the different walks of life and different things people are coming from, and all gathering here on campus. So it's a nice testing ground to practice those societal skills, because they're not going to go away. You're going to go into a workplace, you're going to move into apartment buildings, and et cetera. So you always want to be respectful of your neighbors.
That's right. And I mean, yeah, you're right. It's not going to go away, right? There's expectations in society. And so especially in the workplace, right? Graduating from student to, worker, this stuff is important, and they're teachable moments, right?
Yeah.
So if a student, does have an issue, be it with, other, community members living in res, or just something they want to bring forward, I know there's a ton of channels that they can, do that with, but what might be some of the more recommended ways, or what might a student want? How might they action that?
Yeah. So I think, in order to keep things as simple as possible, you can seek out your RA who's on the floor, or on duty at night, or B, call the front desk. You can dial 0 from your phones, or dial the extension 8000. You'll get the front desk, and just talk to who's working the front desk and let them know what your concerns are, and sort of, again, we'll mobilize as is necessary to come help and get you the help you need. So that's the simplest way to sort of move forward. If you've got a concern, if there's something you're worried about, be it with yourself or with someone you care about within the community, let us know, and we will respond, I promise.
What about also, just to speak to, if a student's feeling like, I really, the room down the hall is super noisy, I really want that dealt with, but I prefer to remain anonymous. I like these people, they're good neighbors, they just get a bit rambunctious, I don't want to approach that myself. Is it okay to keep that anonymous?
100% we can do that. Again, within reason. There may be sometimes, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but that specific example, and it honestly, it happens all the time. We get anonymous reports that people want us to deal with something that's happening. And we respect that privacy and that wish for anonymity. And so we respond in kind. Quite frankly, it's not hard for us to do. We kind of just go to the area anyway. And then we then notice the behavior ourselves. Because again, we can't be everywhere at once. So it's helpful when we're told that, hey, someone's in distress, or there's a problem here, then we can go to that area and respond appropriately and help the person out. So.
Perfect. And in terms of, for students who may have, may or may not have accessed their RA or have gotten to know them, is it appropriate for students, on their floor to just knock on an RA's door? Is that, considered, out of bounds, sort of overextending? What's protocol for that?
Obviously, if it's a need, you can always do that. Most RAs will put up a little bit of a schedule outside of their doors anyway to kind of let you know if they're home, if they're maybe busy doing homework, if they're out, if they don't want to be disturbed. Most RAs will also have their email address. You can always email, save yourself the trip. And most have probably shared their social media at some point, so you can always contact them through just their social media. Again, saving yourself the trip, understanding where we're at right now with COVID, that there could be some hesitation between a face-to-face interaction. So you do have other means to contact them. And again, if you just want to talk to an RA and you're not sure which one and who's working and you don't want to disturb someone, you can call the desk and we can get you in touch with an RA.
Perfect. And so speaking of these times and COVID, and so what differences, have you seen? Obviously there'll be a ton within res, but in terms of safety measures and how we're, being again proactive, with the pandemic all around us, what changes have we made within res? What things can students sort of take, maybe feel a little at ease about knowing that we've got some of these measures in place?
Our big thing, our two biggest things are one, as students anyone who's a returning student would know, we used to have housekeeping come into your rooms weekly, bi-weekly, I should say. We haven't done that. We have instead redirected them towards the sanitization of the building. So pretty regularly, I would say almost on the hour, they're going around desanitizing frequently touched spaces, from doors to buttons and elevators and railings and handles and things like that. Obviously, not always a popular thing, but there are no guests allowed.
I was going to bring that up.
We went back and forth with it quite a bit, from family members to non-family members. In fact, when we were first looking to start the year, we were going to allow family members, but there are some rooming situations where it's okay for you to say, okay, well, my family is my bubble, but now you're living with someone, so now you're introducing, your bubble to another bubble. Then there's the aspect of, quite frankly, trying to limit the amount of people who don't 100% need to be here. Every person we interact with during this pandemic, you're kind of almost interacting with the last 2 or 3 people they interacted with. So you just want
degrees of separation.
Yeah, and you got it. We're trying to not just keep, and the reality is, the rule might seem like it's strictly focused at the residents, but it's also to protect anyone coming into the residence, with the people they're interacting with here, and who knows where they've been out in the public, right? So we're kind of going back and forth, just trying to keep a circle of protection, and the cleanest way to do that is to not have guests. We are not ignorant to the fact that people are probably still trying to sneak in their guests, and their guests are sliding in, but we're just trying to do our best to manage that and to stop that, because the last thing we want to do is have an outbreak in the residence and have to shut down and send everyone home, and maybe really impact people's academics and their learning. So the more we can work together, the better that'll be. Secondary thing we are doing, or tertiary, I don't know, there's so many things we're doing. Obviously, we don't have any of some of our more lounges and public spaces open. Again, we've closed a lot of those places off for the same reason and the same concern. We needed to put some controls on that, to limit the potential for, again, a lot of touch points and shared touch points. So things like the pool room and the TVs and remotes and things like that, we just had to shut them down. Just to make it functional, to try to clean all those things in a reasonable pattern, but B, just to avoid any potential area for a gathering that, quite frankly, we're being maybe overly cautious about, but I think appropriately overly cautious is the way to go, because we are dealing with people's health and a potentially harmful, significantly harmful virus. People have lost their lives to this virus, and some people who haven't lost their lives to the virus have had long-standing medical conditions that they're still recovering from. So there's a pretty big responsibility there to keep people safe. The other thing, obviously, that we've had to do a lot is stuff like this, where we've moved a lot of our programming to um, social media or more virtual. And we hear you and we understand that people want in-person interaction. Um, all of the feedback we get from public health experts are, don't do that. It's so hard to control and keep people safe. And again, the safety piece is trumping a lot of maybe what, we would all like in society right now, which is just to all get together and be in the same room together. But we have a responsibility to, again, follow the directions from public health and stay apart and keep people safe. With that being said, one of the other things we're doing is we want to know if you're not feeling well.
I was going to ask you that. What if, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not feeling well, obviously we want to know about that. We'll work with you and the institution and public health. We want you to, nothing we do trumps public health. We want to know, we want to keep you safe. We want to allow you to isolate here in the res within your room. If it's a roommate situation and one of you feels sick and the other doesn't, we'll separate you. And then we don't want you to have to worry about anything. We will deliver your meals. We will deliver packages to you, for whatever determined time you're told that you need to isolate for. We don't dictate your isolation period. Again, that's going to come from public health. But during that entire isolation period, we are here to support you so that you're not alone. And we can help provide everything from your meal delivery to you to if it's in a pinch, your laundry delivery, we can step in and help you. So we want to know, so please let us know. But with that being said, hopefully, everyone's safe and sound and feeling well and is healthy, but it's that time of year, and don't be dismissive of maybe your symptoms either. Take any symptoms seriously and see a medical health professional and see what they're recommending, and then we will help support you through that.
That's right. It's good advice. And as our students, as I try to sort of keep putting out there, we've got our doctors on campus. If anyone, they want to book an appointment, most of those are over the phone right now, or virtual. And, the rare cases that a doctor deems that, coming into the campus health and wellness center is, the better move. The doctor will indicate that to you pre-appointment. So you'll have that information up, up front. But yeah, so we do have sort of all of those things here. So, by no means are students alone, right?
No.
And then what in the cases where, maybe a student and a roommate have differing values when it comes to, or different opinions on, the pandemic and what's safe and what's not, can we support students? Are there things in place for students if they're feeling, maybe someone's more social than they themselves are?
Yeah, let us know and we'll work with you. If sometimes, again, we'll always encourage students to work on that interpersonal skill and having a real conversation with your roommate. We find that whenever there's conflict, there's usually a breakdown in communication. So keeping those lines of communication open are important. So if you can do that, you might avoid any sort of conflict or strife. But in the event that maybe they're not comfortable or there's just a complete and total cannot get on the same page, come talk to us. We'll work with you. We'll help you find a solution. We'll help you find a compromise. And I guess if push really comes to shove, it's hard to say because I don't know what we're dealing with, but we can step in as the residents and make sure that, again, safety is going to trump a lot of things. So if someone is, completely not doing anything safe and is sneaking people in and stuff like that, we'll deal with that behavior appropriately. If it's simply a matter of, not respecting each other's space, we can try to work with you through that and hopefully, get to a place where there can be, again, that mutual respect piece, as you both cohabitate and live together, not just again within your room, but within the community. So there's lots we can do there.
Perfect. And I guess just to sort of finish up and round this out, is there anything that you can think of, like question I didn't ask, or, a topic or point that you feel like, let's get this out there, it's important?
I guess a few things really.
Mhm.
One, we want to make sure students understand that, again, we know it's difficult right now.
Yeah,
And we know
it is.
that this year is not what any of us envisioned it would be. And so we want you to know we're here for you, that we want you to, again, to talk to us, to let us know when you're struggling. There are still supports here that we can still get to, that we can still help you, that we can advocate for you if we need to, or get people who will advocate for you if you're really struggling and need help. We want to still make this a successful year and not a lost year. Understanding that for a lot of people, this is maybe their first year, and this is not the college or university experience they were expecting to have in their first year. We get that. It's not what we're used to seeing either. But we're all working through it together to get through it together. And there's a lot of supports here and a lot of people who want you to be successful. So don't suffer in silence.
Mhm.
That covers a lot of things.
Yes.
And ignoring some of those things can sometimes lead to some of the more, again, that the small things adding up can start to build and start to really impact you, especially from the
It's
mental health side.
really acute.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And understanding that, globally, we're all kind of going through something together here. And we are all really in it together. And so on top of life's every other day stresses, we all understand that there is a complex virus that is impacting life, and it's impacting the people you love, and it's impacting maybe them financially or maybe just emotionally. And so being there for each other, but knowing that we're here for you, I think is really one of the bigger, more important things I want students to make sure they understand.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, there isn't anything too small, and so I encourage also students to reach out. I mean, even if it's a case of, I can hear my roommate chewing, and it's driving me
Yeah.
wild, right? Like, I mean, because we're all shut in these, and I don't say that because my own children and husband's chewing sometimes is driving me wild, but if I were saying that, I'm saying that, there is no issue too small or too little just to unload or just to say it out loud. Sometimes just get it away from us instead of holding it in, right? Like it
Yeah.
could be,
And do it
this year.
respectfully, have those conversations
Sure.
respectfully with the person involved, because they may not know they're doing that. But yeah, don't let those things build up. Again,
Yeah.
using the roommate example, usually sometimes where we find the roommate situation has become untenable, it's a lot of little things that they just never talk to each other about, but then they're just so done with the person that,
Mhm.
it's hard for us to come in and peacefully resolve it, I guess, in terms of just let's have a mediation, and they want no part of that because they've had it up to here with them. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, had you told us in the beginning when the little thing was bothering you, we might have been able to have crossed that bridge a lot sooner. So
Yeah. And I think this year resentments, it's easy to build them just because we are so, we've all got a bit of cabin fever, I imagine. I
yeah,
know I do, right? Like
yeah,
just sort of these same four walls. So, little things really do seem much bigger at times
mhm,
than they might in previous years, right? So none of you are alone in that. We're all right here with you. So I encourage everyone to reach out to anyone on the team. You have
mhm,
really an amazing team here within residence, and if I dare may say, one of the leading residences in terms of the services we have, the virtual sessions we're running. We've got our social media up and going, right? Our YouTube channels, Instagram, Facebook. Like I think we're doing. I think our students are in good hands, right?
yeah. Follow us. There's always something going on. We hear from a lot sometimes, and students don't know what's happening. If you're following us, especially on Instagram, we're doing something every night of the week. So
Yeah,
if you're sitting around bored or you want a distraction, by all means, follow us. You'll find out where we're doing what, and you can join us. You're more than welcome. We
that's
want
it.
you. So
We do. And if you have ideas, if you're not
yeah,
into what we're doing, you got some ideas, throw it out there.
let us know.
We'll see what sticks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
within reason. Yeah.
Well, yeah, within reason, right? So Marc, thank you so much for joining me and for meeting me today on Bell Let's Talk Day. It's so important, like you said, and yeah, we're here for all of you, you guys. So don't hesitate.
Great. Thank
Thanks
you.
for watching. Yeah.
Take care.